So
I'll start on this side. Councillor Campbell is with me, as far as I can tell. Councillor Klustra. Rob, are you here? Are you there?
Here, Steve.
Thank you. Tim?
Here.
Thank you. Ralph is here. Pat?
yes.
No raspberries, Pat. Jay?
Here. Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Ted's here. And Mason? Mason? Is he? You see a picture of him? No. Was he? Okay. Well, we'll work to get Mason back, but I will call the meeting to order. We definitely have quorum, and Mason will make it a full slate when he gets back on, because he was on. Oh, apparently he's on.
Is it on mute, maybe?
Mason, are you on mute by any chance? Okay, yeah, Mason, if you can hear me, Marcia is indicating that you are muted at your end. And you know, Mason, you're the one on council we count on to be tech savvy. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Is there a motion? Somebody put a motion on the floor to approve the agenda. Thank you, Ted. And seconded by DC. Now, every time I call a vote, which won't be very often, I'm going to go, I will ask for a show of hands in the chamber, and then I will go and I'll ask individually for those who have joined us electronically. So I will ask for an approval of the agenda. We've got a motion and a seconder. All in favor? Thank you. Tim? Approval of agenda? Yay or nay, or yes or no?
I'm not hearing anything, or I can't hear clearly, but I'm assuming I need to say yes.
Thank you. Rob?
Yes.
Thank you. Pat?
Yes.
Jay? Jay?
Yeah, I'm here.
Good to hear. And Mason, are you with us yet? Well, I know you're with us video, maybe not audio-wise. Okay, well, that was enough to carry the motion. So, listen, the purpose, can Mason wave if he can hear us? I want him to at least hear the information. Keep your distance. Can Mason, can you give us a wave if you can hear us?
Who's got that audio on?
Sorry, did Mason give us a hand wave? Can he hear our audio? There he is. I see his picture now. I shouldn't need to touch this, so I could probably just... All right. Oh. Okay. Well, that's important. So hopefully we'll get some audio with Mason. He's verified that he can hear us. Thanks for verifying that, David. Mason, if you have any questions and we aren't able to get them through the system, then I will just get you to maybe send them to Megan, if that's okay. All right, so the purpose of this meeting, first of all, I just want to confirm that Fire Chief Brent Thomas is with us. I see his picture. Chief, you with us? Okay. Just for those folks at home, can the folks at home see this? You can't see that. So I will ask everybody just to give a verbal acknowledgement if there's a vote or a non-vote. So Chief did wave. I'll accept that for now. And Gail, CAO, are you there with us?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am here.
Goodness, so I'm glad that worked well. Okay, So as everybody here, certainly, and at home, certainly, I can't imagine there's anything more front and center in most people's lives than the COVID-19 virus issue that we find ourselves in Orillia, in the province, in the country, and quite frankly, right around the world. So that's why we're gathered here, is to maybe provide an update, and I don't know if the chief is able to do that. It's if so, great. If that's not the desired direction, then I will go right to the floor if that's the case, and open up the floor for questions from council. Council is tasked with continuing to run what are deemed the normal aspects of the business on an ongoing basis, even though much of that has been thrown into turmoil and into question because of the pandemic that we find ourselves in. But they've been receiving information on a daily basis. At the end of the day, a day's summary, and also a number have reached out to me over some on a daily basis with questions, comments, ideas, etc. So they've been quite involved to some degree, but this is a public way to have them make sure that their questions and answers are taken care of for them and for their constituents, should they have any. So with that being said, Chief, did you want to maybe start us off here? From reading your lips, it's brilliant. But yeah, we can't hear you, Chief. You may be experiencing network connection difficulties. Well, we're going to have to solve this because, presumably Gail and I will be able to answer some of the questions, but some of them will definitely be in the Chief's wheelhouse. So if we can't hear him now, we won't be able to hear him then. So we'll need to solve this particular issue.
Mayor Clark, I have asked, or I've advised Brent that we can't hear him, so he is just going to try another method.
Great, thank you. We can certainly hear you, Madam CAO. We do have a peanut gallery today, apparently. Peanut gallery of one. Got a good audio, or video rather, of the chief.
Mayor Clark, there is a chat line. If there's a little box up on the top right where members who are signed on can type in messages and we can send out messages. So,
sure. Yeah, so Ted, that's a good point. So members of council, if questions occur to you, and you can either give them to us through the audio link, or you can type them up in the chat box in the top right-hand corner.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
We can. So Chief, thanks for being there and being here at the same time. I will ask maybe you just to introduce, give your perspective from of where we are during this pandemic crisis, and then I will open up the floor for questions.
Yes, certainly, Mayor Clark, through you to the members of council, both there and online. We've been obviously considering and really meeting a lot since the last week we were able to speak with you, since the declaration of the emergency on Friday evening. So we have our emergency management committee, which you are getting briefed on what notes and decisions that we've been making. So we're meeting daily. We have our emergency control group primaries, which is primarily our senior leadership team, that are meeting daily, and we're pulling them in as we make decisions and need to get advice from people. This, like the mayor said, has been something that has happened, and things are changing rapidly as we go. I guess the biggest point and the most important point I want to make is the clarification so that there's no misunderstanding that our Emergency Management Committee and Emergency Control Group are making decisions for just the emergency, that there are still the decisions and the regular business of the city that will have to and will go through the normal process. And we've made sure that we've had confirmation of that through the Fire Marshal's office and the Emergency Management office. So we are attempting and taking all of your advice and your questions and suggestions as we go through the decision-making process and moving forward and coming up with the decisions made and also the communication plan because of it. And I think, I mean, I could obviously say a lot more, but maybe I'll wait to see what the questions are just so I'm not spending a lot of time on something you may or may not want to hear.
Okay, Chief, thank you very much for that quick overview. And at this point, I will indeed open the floor for questions. I will look for a raised hand. Either, I'm afraid if you're at home, you're going to have to type your question. Yeah, but I won't know if they're in queue. Type your question or indicate in the chat section that you wish to get in queue. That's fine. Then we can probably hear you through the audio link. I'll start in the chamber if there's a question. David.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I'm sure during this we'll be asking some questions that many people here have the answers to and already know, but I want to pose some questions that I've been asked by the public in hopes that anyone watching gets the answers if they have these same questions. So I'll start with the landfill being closed to the public. I've had quite a number of people ask me the specifics as to why that is. Could someone address that, please?
Gail, I think I'll throw that one your way. I mean, I think it's appropriate that you answer this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just so that I understand the question, is the question why is the landfill site closed to the public?
Correct. And from now on, I will just make sure everybody understands. I'll paraphrase the question, but you're right. Yeah, why is because I know that we did try to keep that open for an extended period of time, but the question is, why is it closed now?
Yeah, it's interesting, Mr. Mayor. We can hear certainly people that are on the phone quite well, but there is a lot of unclarity when people are speaking into the mic. So I'm going to answer the question based on what I think the question was, which is why is the landfill site closed to the public? At this point in time, the landfill site, as members of council are aware, is certainly open for our contractor, which is Mid-Ontario. Regular garbage pickup is being taken care of. The issue with respect to the landfill site being open to the public is the configuration essentially of our facility that enables payment. And there was certainly some concerns that were expressed with respect to the staffing and the close connection to people as they were paying for the service at the landfill site. Having said that, Mr. Mayor, that's certainly something that we are continuing to sort of monitor and have discussions about. And if there are different abilities to ensure the physical distancing, there may be consideration to reopening the landfill site, but at this point in time, it will remain closed to the public for this period of time.
Thank you. So closed now, but it could be looked at again if we have proper mitigation methods in place, measures. Anybody else? Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for what you're doing, and also the staff. And I know it's been hard times for all of us, and this is one of the hardest times in my life, and one of the hardest events in our lives as a councillor and as a citizen and as a human being. This will be remembered, Mr. Mayor, for the rest of our lives. So one of the things that I've been asked by the public is it possible to defer the tax payment till July 15th, 2020? I know we're not we don't have penalties or anything else for people not paying them. But if we can just defer the taxes till at least July 15th for the first payment for 2020, or second payment. I think the first one was due in March, if I'm not mistaken. So is it possible to do that?
Well, so July 15th is a slightly different question, but as you recall, members of council, last Friday, council unanimously passed a number of measures to help our citizens, both residents and businesses in town. And one of the measures they passed was waiving of late penalty and interest for taxes, and the same for water and wastewater, water and sewage bills. The effect of that essentially was to allow customers to pay when they could afford it anytime between now and June 30th. So that actually is a measure that's in place. It's in place till June 30th at the moment. If it needs to be revisited as we get it closer to June 30th, then we certainly have that ability and will do so. So that was a good question, and that was as I say, there may not be July 15th at the moment, but it's June 30th, and it could go into July pending further consideration.
So just as an explanation, Mr. Mayor, if people don't pay the taxes till June 30th, then there's no penalty whatsoever at this time. And then if we need to advance that to July 15th or September, whatever, we can still do that, can we?
It will. All the measures we put in place will be revisited the longer that we're in this particular
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
situation. Thank you. Ted.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I don't have a question at the moment, but Rob has put two on the chat line. First, well, he has a comment. He can barely hear you, but one, have all city facilities been cleaned? And his second question was related to has the Perch Festival been canceled?
On the second question first, Rob, can you hear me okay?
I can barely hear you, Steve. It's very muffled.
Is there something that I can do to alter that? Is there a volume?
And same with Ted and Ralph, the same thing. It's the microphone seems to be clearer once you're talking through the web on a regular phone instead of through the chamber. So.
Okay, we're going to attempt to do something here, which I think is going to require more hand sanitizer. And no offense to my gifter.
The mics are right there. It's turned on. Speaking through the system.
Can you speak in the microphone? Do I have the ability to speak through your computer? Okay. Right. That's okay. Rob, is that any better? No, that's audio.
A little bit.
No.
So you could ask him to ask his question, maybe, because he seems to hear you now.
Rob, why don't you, I'm going to get you, I think your questions were, have the city facilities been cleaned? And the other one was around the Perch Festival, and I'll probably answer that question and address all the events before us. But if you, are those the two questions that you have?
Yeah, those are, I have actually three questions, but the first two, just wondering if all the city facilities have been cleaned and disinfected, and how many staff are, for example, are at the rec center working, and the other question was regarding the Perch Festival. Residents have been asking if we're going to cancel it. We had a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce on Tuesday, and there hadn't been any decisions made yet, but I'm just wondering if anything should follow through after that.
Okay, so I think I'll start, and then if Gail or Brent wish to jump in. Actually, on the facilities, Gail, I think I'll have you do that answer, because you probably have a much more definitive answer than I would.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Yes, through you to Councillor Klustra, all municipal facilities have a very proactive cleaning program. We still have our custodians that are on a rotation. So extreme measures are being taken to ensure that the municipal facilities are in fact being clean. In terms of the, I'm not sure if the question was the actual build of the recreation facility. If the question was how many staff are there, as council is well aware, that construction project continues, and we have.
Sorry, Gail, it was through for Rotary Place. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No worries. Thank you for that clarification. Through you, Mr. Mayor. What we have is staff on a rotation, checking those facilities on a daily basis. In terms of staff that are there throughout the day, that is not occurring. So staff are essentially checking each of the facilities on a daily basis.
Thank you for that. With respect to the events, Rob, I'm going to, because I know Councillor Heen or Pat had a question about a number of the events as well. So we met, SLT, or the primary group, met just before we declared the emergency, and we looked at all the municipal events or events in municipal facilities up until including April 30th. And essentially, between people canceling themselves and us canceling them or postponing them, most, if not all, were postponed or canceled. The Perch Festival would fall into the category of any gathering legislation. And Chief, I'm just going to get you, if you happen to be up to speed on the number that are permitted to gather at an event right now. Do you have that number?
The number, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the members of council, the number for gathering, I believe, is still at the under 50, as long as you can isolate or distance, physically distance appropriately. I've seen through the directive from closing businesses that they have a couple of different numbers in there, but as far as that being a public gathering is 50, as long as you can physically isolate, is the latest that I have read. I haven't seen anything different than that.
I don't know. Do I have to use this? Oh, goodness. Okay. Okay, so Chief, so yeah, that's the last number I've heard, that the province has said that no more than 50 people can gather at an event. So I have two things to say about that. When you've already mentioned one. One is, no matter whether it's 2 people or 49 people or 50 people, you must practice social distancing or physical distancing. My strong suspicion is, and I'll get you to weigh in on that number 50 is going to change a lot over the next number of days. And I mean, in Germany right now, that number is 2. So if we get into that situation, I don't know how any event would go forward. But I happen to be speaking with our Member of Parliament and our Member of Provincial Parliament tomorrow morning with the Chamber. And so I'm glad to bring that question up for anybody interested in the Perch Festival. But I'm gonna step out a little bit, and I'm going to suggest, at least from my personal opinion, that almost every event is going to be canceled over the next few weeks. That's just my best guess, but that's where this crisis is not going to get better for a while. It's going to get worse, and I believe the restrictions coming from the federal government, the province, and I would even suggest from the municipality, those restrictions are going to get tighter and tighter. Yes, Jennifer.
Just regarding events, people may be looking at postponements as well, as opposed to just outright cancellations. Indeed.
So yeah, it's not, as it was with a number of things. It doesn't have to be an outright cancellation. It can be a postponement, but that'll be up to the individual events and organizations. Okay, I'm gonna Jay, same. We can hear Megan. Okay, Councillor Lauer, do you want to try your audio for your question? If that doesn't work, then I will read it off the screen. Okay.
Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Yep. So I just typed my question in there. Can I do that? Or you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, that's fine. No, if you've put it in there, I can read it for you. Is that all right?
No, maybe I should read it because you might be able to hear me better than I can hear you.
Carry on.
Okay. So the question is for the chief. I'm just curious, if sort of, as I mentioned, the what-if department, if, and hopefully we don't get this far, but if we do get to a lockdown, do we have the police resources to deal with that?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Lauer and the other members of council, we had a phone conversation at one of our meetings with Inspector Eaton and Staff Sergeant Watson from OPP. They would have to redeploy some resources if we got to that point. That's certainly something that they're considering, but currently they don't have the resources to do that. So if we got to that point, enforcement, it looks like at this point would strictly be through OPP. We are actually trying to get some clarification. We've got some initial clarification, but I don't know if we have a definitive answer yet on if our MLEOs would be able to be used in some capacity or not. Currently, no, it would all be an OPP matter, but that is certainly something that we're asking questions about, and OPP are looking at on their end. They said if there is some sort of declaration like that, they have the ability to pull provincial resources the way that they need to go, but that is something that they were working on with their emergency planning and continuity of operations.
Yeah, good. You make some good points, Chief. Yeah, there certainly are. We've been in constant communication with the OPP. They understand that could be an eventuality, and they will be prepared for it. They've pulled personnel from different aspects of their operation to bolster their local contingencies. The other point the chief hit on, and I'll just repeat it, is that our municipal law enforcement officers, or the MELOs, managed by Mr. Crawford, are also a great resource. At the moment, they are enabled to do some enforcement within the community. This particular type of enforcement at the moment does not fall into their purview, but my understanding from speaking with Ms. Dunlop, our MPP, and others, is that they are likely to be deputized through some sort of legislation in the very, very near future, would help supplement some of the enforcement should we get into that lockdown situation. Thank you. Jake, fire away. Go ahead. Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. I had just a series of questions. I'll just pose them all, and then you can answer them, or we can have Brent answer them, I guess, in order. Here, I'll just go through them. First, what is the best way for individuals in the community to report businesses that aren't following the directives of the provincial government? Question 2, does our city have the capacity to ticket groups in parks or in streets? And what else can we do there? If we can't ticket, can we ask, can we basically ensure that there are individuals that, if they can't ticket, can approach, not approach people, stay safe distance, but encourage them to distance and disperse? The third question, I think it's going to be the most important. How else can our city help out our hospital? I know we're doing some things right now. Can we do anything more to ensure that we best provide the service, or best provide the equipment that's needed? And I really want to emphasize, I think that should be a primary focus of the city, is assisting the hospital in any way. The last question, and I know we've all brought it up before, but is it possible to move these meetings to a complete online platform? I think, at a certain point, it's heading that way. In terms of the audio quality, it's better online, and it really just reduces the risk of the council members and the staff that are in the chamber for each of these meetings. So I think it's something we should explore and really push hard to change. I'll leave Brent to answer any of the questions or any other staff that can cover. Thanks.
I can hop in on a couple of these,
Mr.
but
Mayor, may I start with
Yep.
the responses to the question, and then if anybody else on the team has further clarification, they can jump in?
go right ahead.
Okay. So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Fallis, thanks for the questions. The EMC has, as Brent indicated, met every day essentially since the emergency declaration, and it seems like our agenda is growing and growing. One of the discussion points that we've had is through our enforcement as well as our economic development department is to focus on a business outreach program that's currently underway in terms of communicating with our business community. We are moving forward. We've assigned folks, and you'll see that from your note yesterday, that we have assigned folks to a sign task force, which we will be moving forward, a proactive approach to installing signs throughout the community to help with the education piece. If we are also looking at a proactive approach to assist with the compliance of the provincial legislation, as it was either Mayor Clark or Brent alluded to. At this point in time, it is unclear of the municipal bylaw enforcement officer's powers in terms of actual enforcement, but that does not preclude us from being able to go out and communicate. So if in fact we have businesses that are not complying with the provincial legislation, we are going to take a first step to help educate, to encourage the compliance. And if they continue to contravene the provisions of the legislation, then we will forward that on to the OPP. So that's the sort of proactive approach that we are taking with respect to the businesses. In terms of the ticketing ability for people that are congregating in groups, at this point in time, again, our role is more the education and encouraging compliance. If we are heading towards legal enforcement, and what I mean by that is ticketing, then we would need to rely on our OPP to assist in that process. We've been in constant communication with our detachment commander, and that is the approach that the OPP are taking as well. Let's educate, let's help people understand the importance of complying, and then if you continue to contravene, then it's strict enforcement. The other piece that you had asked, we actually, just before we headed into the council meeting, the Emergency Management Committee had a lengthy conversation with the CEO of the hospital, and I think it was a very educational discussion, and there was absolutely sort of next steps in terms of preparing for what potentially the future may look like in terms of maybe using municipal facilities. So we're in constant contact with the hospital to make sure that if there's anything further that we can do as a city to assist, that we fully understand that. So that communication is wide open. And perhaps, Mr. Mayor, I'll let you speak to the issue of the online platform for the council meetings, or if in fact I've missed anything, certainly if the remaining EMC members could make sure that you fill in any blanks.
Yeah, so the only thing I would add to the enforcement piece, should we get to that point, many will now know in the community that the provincial government, when they made their declaration of an emergency, brought in some legislation that allows enforcement agencies, at the moment our policing agency, and probably soon our municipal enforcement agency, to ticket for non-compliance. So if we do see somebody, first of all, I'm hoping that a warning, first of all, we shouldn't have to warn at this point. Everybody should be well aware of it. I guess maybe some people find old habits hard to break, but I'm hoping that a warning, if they are non-complying, does the trick. If it doesn't, we've tried to take a staged approach. Right now, we're asking, recommending, requesting, and if we get to the point where we are mandating, that will be followed up with an enforcement tool, and the ticket for non-compliance in a situation such as Jay has brought up would be $750, and if there's any obstruction of that, it's actually another ticket of $1,000, and then there's a corporate or a business fine as well that could be levied. We hope that we don't get to that point. We generally have a very cooperative community, but I will say, as I've said in the media and in a couple of videos we put out, that 80% or 90% compliance in this situation doesn't work. It needs to be 100%. So, Jay, you raise a good question. On the complete online form, willing to consider anything. The only thing I will say, as you can see, we are very well spaced around the platform. The chamber has been sanitized by our custodial staff, and we're exercising physical distancing. My personal reaction is we can consider anything, but we also have some people in the community that are working in businesses and services that are been deemed essential, and they must go to work. So as mayor, I'm quite willing to show them that if you can go to work and if you can be safe, that's also a different type of example to set. But I do understand your point of setting the example of staying home, because that is essentially one of the main requests. Councillor Eamon, you wish to weigh in on this?
I do, Mayor Clark. The other point is a technical point. Our meetings are public meetings, and these meetings are public because they're being streamed by Rogers, and anybody at home who has a computer can get on. I don't know if they're on the TV, but if they are, likewise, you can sign on to Channel 10. Our technology at the moment doesn't allow us to have a small conference like we are attempted to do today with the video and thing, and broadcast that. So as before we have our next meeting, I'm sure our IT staff will be looking at that and trying to determine how could we marry up the two so that we can meet that obligation of not only keeping us in the loop and allowing us to ask questions, which is fine, but I think it's even more important that these meetings and these discussions be viewed and heard by the population of Orillia generally.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you both for that. Pat, I have you in queue. Whoops, sorry. Oh, sorry, JR. Ms. Ruff?
To you, Mayor Clark, just back to Councillor Follis's question regarding how to report non-compliance. We do have a really great frequently asked questions section on orillia.ca/COVID-19, which does provide some contacts for an online reporting tool, which is www.opp.ca/reporting. And there is a 188 number there as well that people can use. So that's just go to our website and those contacts are available.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. So, Jay, because your first question was, what's the best way to report a non-compliance of a business that isn't practicing things that it should be, or people not socially distancing, whatever it happens to be, and we've been in communication with the OPP, and they have asked people to use the citizen self-reporting mechanism, which is indeed on www.opp/reporting. So reporting OPP, www.opp/reporting.ca. JR, one more time.
To you, Mayor Clark, www.opp.ca/reporting.
Thank you. And there's also the 888 number. I know it's 888-310. Do we have that number handy, JR?
Yes, through you, Mayor Clark, it's 1-888-310-1122.
Yeah, that is something you would not call 911 for, but you can certainly call the 888 number or use the citizen self-reporting tool, which is a tool that's there all the time, by the way, which is very effective and it's very beneficial to the police when you use that particular option. All right, Pat.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. The only way it seems to work for me is if I do it over the webcam. First of all, I wanted to say thank you. The videos that have been produced over the last few days have been awesome. And I know that that's been a team effort. It hasn't just been you. There's been a whole group of people that have worked really hard to put them together. But you've had a calm, reassuring voice that's been really beneficial to our community, and that's what they needed to hear. So thank you to the whole team for putting them together. They've been well received, and I think it's been very good for our community. I also had a couple of questions. Jay asked one of them. One of them is, what are we going to do about the port opening? I know it's just barely over the month, but it's something that we need to be putting our minds to, because people are making plans, and I suspect that it won't be open, but it's a question I did have. If we do open it, are we going to space out the slips so that they're every other one, or what are we going to do about that? That's my first question. I'll ask that one, and then I'll go to my second one.
So with respect to the port, I'm going to suggest, again, I'll be having a actually, we've had a number of communications with the Chamber as late as yesterday, and will happen again tomorrow. I will broach that question. Again, the port opening is generally a function that attracts many people, and certainly at this stage, that's not going to be allowed to happen. So my suspicion is, anyway, that's going to be visited, as I say, with every event we have coming up. And as the restrictions continue to come in, which I believe they will, from the senior levels of government and maybe even from the municipality, those events are going to be harder and harder to hold. The port opening is a wonderful celebration each year. It's kind of a rite of spring, but stay tuned, because I'm sure that's also an evolving situation. But go ahead and answer your next question. Ask your next question.
Actually, I meant the port being opened itself, but we can. But that's one thing. My other question is, do we know how our hospital is about having the necessary supplies it needs? And the second part of that is that I was talking to a friend of mine this morning who's a retired nurse, and quite often people may have supplies in their own homes, like some of the needed masks or rubber gloves. And if they have them, can we put something in place that people can turn those needed supplies over to the hospital, and how would we do that?
I think I'll start, and then I'll let JR jump in, or if Brent or Gail wish to, please do, or indicate on the screen. We've had a couple of conversations, certainly had a good conversation with Carmen Stumpo, the CEO and president of the Orillia Soldiers Memorial Hospital, or Soldiers Memorial now. And he has indicated that there's been some wonderful philanthropy throughout the community. They have a number of donations already, and we talked about some other possibilities today. They are going to do all that through the hospital foundation. And so if somebody out there does have something they believe is an essential item for our healthcare service, in particular, that would be a channel that you would use, is to get a hold of the hospital foundation. But JR, if you want to jump in.
Through Mayor Clark, certainly that is being spearheaded through the Hospital Foundation. And if there are businesses or individuals looking to provide those donations, you want to go to osmhfoundation.ca/donate. And they have more information on their Facebook page and website.
Gail or Chief, do you want to add anything further?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything further.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's Brent Thomas. I don't either.
Thank you. Pat, any further questions at this moment?
No, that's fine for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rob, you have a question. I can either read it for you, or you can verbally give it. Okay, Rob has a question. I think this is directed to our manager of IT. It's basically Rob's indicating that the beer store may have been hacked last night. Are we prepared for cyber hacks at this time? And Liz, if you would mind fielding that question, that'd be great. If you could speak right into this.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We are always on heightened alert for any type of cybersecurity issues. We are constantly monitoring whether in an emergency situation or not. So we certainly have heightened security right now. I am not aware of the particular incident you are talking about regarding the beer store, but we will certainly look into that.
Great, thank you, Liz. I know it has been a topic of conversation before this particular event, and certainly when the event was imminent, and certainly since. So thank you for that. Further questions, comments, Ralph?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As far as having things at facilities that we own, such as the port and that, I think it's our responsibility to say yes or no to it. And I think at this time, I would be willing to put a motion on the floor that until probably the middle of May, because we have a liability here, Mr. Mayor, that if something happens during that event or whatever it is, we've been warned. We've been warned by the province. We've been warned by the Board of Health. And we've been warned by the federal health people that it's not going to last 2 weeks. It's going to last a month or even more. So I think we have that responsibility to say no at this time until we further notice, which will probably be sometime in May. I mean, I hate the idea of foregoing the Perch Festival. It's something that it's very close to my heart, but I think we owe it to our citizens, because there was a lot of citizens in Orillia that participated in this as well. And I have some more questions, but please answer that.
Okay, well,
I think and I'd be willing to move a motion that no events be held till at least May 15th.
I want to be clear that decision will be charged to the emergency committee, but I do want to say that first of all, you're right. First of all, I hope that the municipality has demonstrated that we've been proactive on decisions and restrictions. We're taking a staged approach. Part of that staged approach is to look at events as they come up. I'm going to suggest a decision on that event is very imminent. I mean, again, I'm meeting with the chamber tomorrow. If we get an indication that they are shutting it down unilaterally, then it's a decision we don't have to make. But if not, then we'll be faced with that. But this is going to go on for every week by week, and as long as this goes on. So you're bang on. It certainly will be contemplated. And at the moment, I'm hard pressed to imagine many events going on in the next couple of months.
I have
further questions?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time for asking this question. God forbid that we ever have to use it. If I remember correctly, back when I was on council during the regular rec center proposal, it was supposed to be an emergency morgue for events that were happening or catastrophes that happened in Simcoe County and that. And through you to our chief, has there been any talk of, God forbid, that we need to use a facility for a morgue that more than what's happened now? And I think you know what I'm getting at, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, I've been part of those discussions, but I'll let the chief weigh in on that. Chief, the possibility of the contemplation of the possibility of a temporary morgue.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cipolla and the members of council, we do have that contingency laid out. We actually had some conversations, as was previously mentioned by the mayor and the CAO, with the CEO of Soldiers Hospital, and we do have that within our plan, and we have a bit of a working group for an off-site facility should we need to house people, and also the worst-case scenario of a place to house those who have passed away until it can be processed.
And that is that question and that answer is the harsh reality of the potential reality of the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The other question I had, and I think
Go right ahead.
I sent the email to you, or comment to you about using the HRC. Have we touched base with the province for the homeless in our community or people that need to utilize once the hotels get filled up? Because I know the RTO 7 is putting out a memo as of this morning that we would like people to stay out of our area from a tourist, from hotels and everything else, because it's not conducive to what's happening in the area. So that's the one question. The other one, Mr. Mayor, that I'd like to ask is I've been driving around and I drove basically to quite a few of the bus stops, and people are still congregating to get on the bus, and also down here in front of the Opera House, they're congregating more than, and they're not 2 meters away from each other. So I'm wondering if we can get if the emergency unit can get a report from our bus people that maybe we should cancel the bus transportation at this time in order to protect our citizens, because people are not adhering to your comments, Mr. Mayor, about staying 2 meters away or 3 meters away from each other. So I think we need to take that responsibility, and I'd like to pass that on to our emergency team to have a real serious look at canceling the buses within. And I know I hate it, but I think it'll protect some of the people around.
Gail or Brent, do you want to start us off on that one?
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Was it Gail or me? Sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, Gail, if you're in queue.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I'll start and certainly Brent jump in. The issue of the transit system, I believe I've heard Councillor Sapola's question. The concerns lie with the folks congregating at the bus stops. And the request to reach out to talk to see whether they're faced with any challenges. I think from my perspective, Mr. Mayor, what we certainly can do, we do have staff that are essentially driving around the city to see if, in fact, number one, to check facilities, number two, to check the playground equipment and so on to ensure that that there's compliance. I will ask them to focus on some of the bus stop areas to see and report back to the EMC in terms of whether there is a problem. I understand Councillor Sapola has personally observed that. So we will ask our staff to have a look at that. We will reach out to talk to have that discussion. I'm not certain as to what the last part of his question was. I think he said something along the lines about discontinuing the service. Is that what I heard?
That's correct.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that is not something that the EMC has discussed in terms of discontinuing the transit service, because we're not aware of it being a problem, but we will certainly commit to reaching out to talk to ask them to provide us with an update. So I will ensure that we do that, and that'll be part of our agenda for tomorrow.
Chief, anything you'd like to add?
No, not me. That's great.
Thank you. JR?
Through Mayor Clark, certainly Gail alluded to a sign task force that has been established, and we are getting some proactive signage developed, and we'll certainly keep bus shelters and buses in mind in terms of promoting the measures that are in place.
Two comments I would add. One is, for some people in our community, for a number of that, it is in their minds an essential service. So if we can continue to provide that in a safe manner, we will. If we can't provide it in a safe manner, it will be looked at. We put some measures in place for the drivers. We by getting rid of the need for a fare for a defined period of time, so transit is free. That means we do not have to, in most cases, open the front door, and therefore people can enter through the back door, and the driver is kept, not good physical distance away. And we also requested that TAC put some sort of barrier or strap or something between the driver and the passengers, again, to further give them some protection.
Mr. Mayor, what's happening is
Go right ahead.
What's happening is that people are sitting side by side, and people getting on the bus, and then they're not relatives or anything else, but they're getting on the bus and sitting beside the other people without somebody telling them not to. And I think that's the problem I see.
I would suggest if they're not from the same family or a significant other of each other, then if that's happening, that's problematic, and we can certainly reach out to talk and have that conversation. I mean, I see people walking in the park, and sometimes obvious it's a couple that I see. So my understanding, if they're doing all the things they're supposed to be doing during their day, and they're screening themselves when they come in the house, that's acceptable. I assume that would also be acceptable on a transit bus. I would also hope that they would have hand sanitizer in their pocket, so if they're touching any surfaces, they're sanitizing themselves. I think that's probably good on that question. Dave, you?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I know this question was brought up at a previous meeting, and I just wondered if we had a definitive answer. The time of use rates for the province have gone by the wayside. It's the low price all the time now. And I wondered if we had confirmation from Orillia Power that is the case in Orillia.
I believe I know the answer to that, but Gail, if you want to weigh in on that. Time of use electricity rates in Orillia?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it was my understanding that the OEB has provided direction with respect to time of use, and I'll just maybe ask Jennifer if you have that in front of you. That was part of a news release that went out the other day.
My understanding is, I'll let JR hunt that down, but the OPC, Orillia Power, was contemplating that, actually had a plan in place, and then the OEB took the provincial step to essentially do the same thing with a slightly different timeline, which I think has been now matched in Orillia. Jen?
Sorry, through you, Mayor Clark, to clarify the question, is it just whether or not that's effective in Orillia? Yeah, so we do have that on our website, and that, yes, it is immediate electricity rate relief for families, small businesses, and farms paying time of use rates. So there is more information on our website of what that looks like, and certainly it's suspending the time of use electricity rates to be the off-peak time.
Great, thank you. Further questions, comments? I'll just reiterate it. I know people around the chamber are aware of it, but Jen's department's been doing a great job on the website. So if you go on to Orillia.ca, COVID-19 page, there's all kinds of information there, and including a very fluid page with FAQs, frequently asked questions. So when we're getting a question repeated a number of times, we are doing the research and getting reliable answers on the website. So I encourage you to go to cityoforillia.ca, COVID-19, and open up the FAQ page. And if there's a question on there that council is getting on a regular basis that we don't see the answer to there or the question there, please let Jennifer's department know. Okay, anybody else in queue? Ralph?
This is my last comment. I needed something for our house today in order to make it viable, and I handed it to Home Hardware. And I want to compliment some of the retailers, Mr. Mayor. We're outside taking the order and not staying 3 meters away, and they have a tent outside, and also a few of the food stores that I went to. They're very, very efficient, and they're following the rules that we've established, or emergency task force has established in this province. So those people ought to be complimented and thanked. And also, for my last comment, I want to thank the people that in the health unit, Dr. Gardner, if we listen to his videos and everything else, very efficient, very knowledgeable in what's happening within our community, and condolences go out to the two families that have lost their loved ones here in Orillia. I think there's 3 now. There was one yesterday, a lady yesterday, and then one more. So our condolences.
Okay. Jen?
Through Mayor Clark, if I just may take this opportunity, those are excellent stories to share in regards to businesses taking part and healthcare workers and sharing some of those positive stories that are happening. So I just want to remind people of the campaign that we launched called Orillia Cares. So if certainly you are seeing those positive stories out in the community and want to give a shout out to someone who's gone above and beyond, please feel free to do so by tagging the City of Orillia and hashtag Orillia Cares so we can share those stories.
Just on that,
Ted?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, a gentleman called me.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Thank you. Gentleman called me needed something that was necessary for his house, and I picked it up at Home Hardware and I delivered it to him this afternoon. But I think there's a lot of people out there doing the same thing, and thanks to what you've put out, people are knowledgeable enough to call other people that can do that. So thank you, Jen, for doing that.
Thank you. Ted?
Yeah, Pat was in the queue, but I'll just make my comment very quickly. As many of you know, I live in a condominium complex comprised mostly of seniors. All of us are at risk. And every morning at 11:30, many of our neighbors go out on their front porch, wave to one another, just to make sure that everybody's fine. So again, another good story.
Well, Councillor Freeman, I'll be looking for that Twitter post this evening, tagging the City of Orillia, and with the hashtag Orillia Cares, and I will commend Jen's department for coming up with that campaign. This is a sad time that we're in, and without being alarmist, it's going to be more sad before we're through it. But there are some wonderful stories out there. Orillia was awarded as a couple of years ago as the most giving, caring, philanthropic community in all of Ontario, and I'm seeing many demonstrations of that. I see responsible business owners. I see individuals identifying people who are vulnerable and are isolated and doing favors for them. And indeed, Councillor Spull, I drove up to Home Building Center today and just commended them. They take the lead in so many different ways in the community, and certainly they were out in front of the restrictions that came in on this particular issue. So but I would encourage anybody, if you're aware of a good story, there was a great little impromptu concert that broke out on Nawash Street a couple of days ago. Everybody spaced well apart. It was a kind of a neighborhood thing, and my granddaughter, my year-and-a-half-old granddaughter, was probably the most excited. It was just a great little concert that broke out on Nawash, and so there are some heartwarming and nice stories, and we need to get those out and encourage others. So tag Orillia, City of Orillia, and hashtag Orillia Cares. And now we have the ever-patient Pat Heen in queue. Go ahead, Pat.
It's quite all right, Mayor Clark. I was just going to comment on Ralph's idea of shutting down the buses, and I think the buses are essential for so many essential workers. They're the ones that are keeping us going during this difficult time. The grocery store cashiers, the hospital workers, all the stores that really need to be open. So I really think that we need to keep those buses going. So if people can space themselves apart, I think this is essential. So it was just going back to that previous comment. So that was the only comment that I wanted to make back to a previous conversation that we've had. Thanks.
Thank you. As long as it's done safely, we'll continue to do it. Go ahead, Jay.
Can you hear me?
Indeed.
Thanks. Just the last, comment on Pat. Of course, transit is an essential service, and so it does need to, I would agree, it needs to stay open, but we have to be very careful about people that are on the bus. The other thing I did want to just ask, and I assume it is taking place, but I just wanted to confirm, are we, for those staff at City Hall that we are keeping on for the basics, are we ensuring that they're adequately partitioned, separated throughout the City Hall building? Thanks.
Gail, did you catch that question well enough?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I did catch that question. And yes, through you to the counselor. There's an absolutely proactive approach to all of this, and the physical distancing is absolutely being maintained at City Hall. Essentially, there's a couple of people in each department. We're still trying to maintain that level of service to be able to have a person at the end of a line if in fact somebody's phoning through. That may change, but at this point in time, that is the level of service that we're trying to maintain. So absolutely, the staff that are at City Hall are in fact absolutely adhering to the physical distancing requirement.
I would just add that every at least 5 days a week, the primary group or the senior staff are meeting, and that is a constant topic of conversation. So I would add that to Gail's answer. All right. Further questions, comments? Okay. And if that's the case, I will. Yeah. So I will ask. Well, yeah, the screens aren't on. Well, maybe it is on. I didn't turn it on. Oh goodness. Anyway, so yes, we do have so this was an opportunity for council members to ask questions on behalf of themselves, which they can do anytime. They can get a hold of me any time of any day, and or on behalf of their constituents, and hopefully that was helpful for the public. But I'll go to Councillor Iman before I begin to sign off.
Mayor Clark, thank you. I would be willing to move the confirming bylaw, which is required before we adjourn this meeting.
Jay, do you have another question? Oh, he's typing it. Okay.
Sorry. Hi. Yeah, sorry. Just a follow-up. Thanks for putting me back there. Just on my last comment there, not just our staff following protocol, are they given opportunities, for example, if there's a couple people in one department, are they given opportunities to take different desks at different sides of the room? That's all. Thanks.
Oh, Jay, I can well assure you that in every single department that those things are being analyzed and put in place. So it's a good question, and the answer quite simply is yes. Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Iman, seconded by Councillor Sapola, that it's a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its special meeting held on this very day, Thursday, March 26th, 2020. Bylaw number 2020-22. Any further discussion? I will now call the question. All in favor? And I need at least 2 yays from the electronic participants. Pat, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Rob. In that case, I'll let the rest of you off the hook. Unless you want me to call, ask everybody?
Yay.
Thank you. Tim? Tim, yes or no?
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. I believe we got everybody now. And one from Mason. Thank you. Thank you, Mason. Thank you. Listen, the IT had us almost up and going 100% in a completely different format that we've ever used before, so I thank them for that, and I'm sure that'll even evolve further. So with that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, moved by Ralph, seconded by Ted. I think that was it. All in favor? Thank you. Jay? Adjournment? Thank you. Mason? Mason's usually the first one in queue for an adjournment. Pat?
Yes.
Tim?
Yep.
Rob?
Yes.
Thank you. Continue to be safe. Spread the word, not the virus. Be safe home.